My name's Stephen Chin. We're going to be doing interviews all Wednesday through Friday here in Malmo, Sweden. And I'm joined by Christine Wiedemann. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Good, good. Well, no, actually, I'm doing horrible because I'm jet lagged. And I'm worn
Oh,
out from the Java 1 conference last week. And in general, I'm, in a really horrible mood. But thanks for asking.
I played some pinball just before we started chatting, so I'm in a very good mood right now.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Maybe if I play some pinball and beat the ball
You should try it.
around, like slap the ball a few times, that'll make me feel better emotionally.
Yes, sure. Try that. See how it works out for you.
Um, so you're talking about testing at the conference here at Øredev. What sort of things are you giving in your presentation, or did you give in your presentation?
Well, so I am a software tester, and that's what I'm passionate about is testing software. And what I'm trying to push at this conference is really the collaborative aspect. That testers are not the gatekeepers of quality. Quality is a team effort. The team owns quality. And to build quality products, testers and developers and everyone else on the team need to actually work together and not throw things over the wall, not point fingers or blame each other.
So, do you have any advice for software developers who are working in teams on how they should be working together with the QA,
The
the
testers
quality
are there to
assurance
help.
testers?
Well, I'm not a big fan of quality assurance either, the term or the concept.
Okay, is that
Quality
like a
assistance.
quality assistance?
I, as a tester, can't assure quality because quality means you actually fix the defects I might find,
Yeah.
and I can't influence that. I can only find ways in which the software might fail. And then I need help from developers and decision makers to actually fix it. So my advice for developers would be to actually just start talking to the testers. See how they can help, because testers are there to provide a service to everyone that's a stakeholder, and that includes developers. So what can your testers do for you?
So most of the projects you work in, are they using some sort of software methodology, or what's usually your interface point with the teams?
Depends on if you ask them or if you ask me, I would say. They all use a methodology. Is it a perfect example out of a book? No, absolutely not. But I also don't think it should be. You should find a methodology that's going to support the goals of your organization and then adapt it.
Yeah.
And to some extent, that's what people do. And sometimes it's more, maybe not in their best interest how they're deviating. And sometimes it works really well. And I would say iterative development is definitely dominating. But there are still fairly traditional waterfall projects out there too.
Okay, but that doesn't really impact the way you interface with the team. So regardless of whether they're doing waterfall or they're doing some sort of agile methodology, you can pretty much apply the same testing principles on how you kind of work and guide the teams.
What I think is really important in terms of testing is early testing, whether you're agile or following the waterfall methodology. You can test and you should test the requirements. You should test the design. You should do a lot of testing before you even start implementing code.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of organizations and projects fall down. Again, regardless of the methodology, it's very easy to save testing for last anyway, whether it's the last day of your sprint or the last month of your waterfall project.
Okay, so that's a typical failure scenario, is folks waiting too long to start their testing and then
Yeah,
uncovering issues.
uncovering issues when it's too late to fix them, and also if you don't involve testing early, you don't even know if your requirements, for example, are testable. You can't affect the delivery schedules to get functionality delivered in an order that you can actually test it. So it's important for testing to be part of the software development from day one on a project.
So do you ever do exploratory testing with teams?
Absolutely.
So when would you do that in the software lifecycle? Would you do it right from the beginning, or would you wait until there was enough of a user interface that you could actually?
I would do it all the time. Exploratory testing means that you don't have detailed steps defined in advance. it doesn't mean you don't have a structure or a plan for what you do or that you don't document. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions around what exploratory testing is. And there's a time and place for detailed scripts. And most of the time, your test approach is going to be a hybrid of both. There are some things you might script out in detail because you need that level of information to run the tests. But exploratory testing allows you to find more critical bugs faster. And it's more fun. It's more creative.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Okay, so what about automated testing with teams? How much should the QA person be involved with creation of automated tests or scenarios which the automated tests are based upon?
So in general, I feel like we often talk about manual versus automated testing, manual scripted versus exploratory testing.
Yeah.
And I don't like that very much. I think about testing as a holistic concept. And testing involves automation, manual testing, exploratory testing. And how much you should automate depends on the project. And it depends on the team. What skill sets do you have? Are the tests going to be rerun? They're very mundane, they're very boring for a human to do.
Yeah.
And that's where automation fits. But there is also an investment in time and effort. So if you're not going to rerun your tests, maybe it's not worthwhile automating them. Often when we talk about automation, we also think about automated scripts that are really tests that we execute. But automation can do so much more on a project. You can use automation to generate test data. You can write simple, small scripts that do fairly trivial tasks. So I just want to make sure that when we talk about automation, we're not just talking about automating a test script.
Do you ever use, I've heard folks using software suites which will create kind of randomized test data to shock a system. Are those effective in your experience, using those to cover different failure scenarios in software by doing data-driven testing?
It depends. It can be very easy to find failures by manipulating the input data.
Yeah.
So most systems are not very robust. Developers don't catch all the error cases. But if it's worthwhile to do that type of testing or not depends on if it's really a high risk. If you look at just one part of the system and you manipulate the input data, you might be able to generate a lot of failures. But is there an integration that the data is coming from a different system that actually does data validation? Then if I go in and I manipulate system B, but the data would come from system A, I'm not really adding any value by running those tests.
So you might be testing scenarios which aren't possible given the other systems involved in the...
It might be impossible or very, very unlikely. And they might also be very low risk. Even if the impact is high, the likelihood might be so low that I'm not using my time wisely by running them. The problem is they're fun though, and they're kind of easy to run, so it's easy to end up sometimes wasting a little bit of time there. But having tools that help you randomize or generate data is definitely valuable.
Okay. And when we were chatting earlier, you mentioned that you do a lot of testing of integrations between different existing software products. So any advice, like if you were starting on a project which had a bunch of large components you're integrating, any advice on the best place to get started testing it or an approach?
Well, obviously the integration point, so it sounds trivial, but you really need to understand the architecture of the system and where the integration points are and how data is flowing and what systems and what users are consuming and producing the data in the system. What is really the data flow? And you have to ask different people because you are going to get different answers depending on if you ask a business analyst, a developer, or a system architect, or a database analyst. And you need to get the input from everyone. And I like to always create my own diagrams and flows because it's easier to have that conversation if you have something visual to show someone. And often if you take the proper architectural diagram, it's too complicated for everyone to really look at and find anything that might
so
be
maybe
missing.
you have a simplified version which just highlights the integration points that you really want to focus on testing.
That you can take to all the different roles and get their feedback to understand what do I need to test.
Yeah.
And just asking people, what are they afraid of? If we launch this product tomorrow, what will keep you up tonight?
Yeah. And those are usually questions people only think about right when they're deploying.
Exactly, but it's still there at the back of your mind all throughout the project. But if you let it bubble up to the surface, it gives you more ideas for how to structure your testing.
Cool. So to kind of close out, is there maybe a few points of advice you can give developers on the best way to get started with working better with the testers in their group?
So I really like pair testing. And there are different ways of doing pair testing, but pairing up developers and testers is a great way to, first of all, get better understanding of each other's different roles. And that way, the testers get a bit of an understanding of how the code is structured, and the developers get a better understanding of testing. And doing pair testing also allows you a really short feedback loop. As a tester, I can ask very pointed questions about your code, and you can walk me through the code and I'll ask, so what happens if you do this, or if the user enters this data?
Yeah.
And you can just fix any problems we find on the fly. So it opens up for collaboration and communication, and it's fun. And again, it's fast and efficient.
Yeah, and it sounds like something fairly easy to get started with no matter what sort of software methodology you're using.
No matter what the methodology is or the technology, you can always do pair testing. And it can be seen as a waste of time since you're taking up two people's time to do one task. But it tends to actually save you a lot of time just because the feedback is so much faster. So that would be my suggestion to start, is to do pair testing. And to ask the testers as a developer, how can you help me?
Yeah.
What's the service I can get from you? Because we're not opposing roles. We're working together. We have the same goal, or at least we should have. So how can we work better together to achieve that goal? And just to ask that very frank questions. What can I get from you? How can you add value to me?
Cool. That makes sense. So thank you very much, Christine, for the short interview here at the
Thank
Øredev
you.
conference. So I have a gift of sorts.
Oh, I
So
love stickers.
you get the exclusive night hacking sticker. It goes very nice on
So it's gonna
laptops.
go on my laptop, so everyone that goes to my session tomorrow will see it for sure. Thank you so much.
And that's for the going through the pain of being embarrassed on a live interview program.
I'm actually really good at embarrassing myself in all different contexts, so
That's one of the traits of speakers. So you're doing excellent. Picked an excellent conference to embarrass yourself at.
so that I'm doing excellent, does it mean that I really embarrassed myself just now, or what are you trying to tell me here?
We'll take it as a compliment.
Okay, I'll go with that one.
All right. Thanks very much.
Thank you. It was very
And
nice
good luck
chatting
with your
you.
session.
Thanks.